Today, this topic, transformation through AI, it's actually a very vast topic, and it's really hard to do justice in 30 to 40 minutes. So I will try to cover only those important aspects which pertain to how AI can and should be made integral to product development and commercialization. As a scientist or as an operator or as an associate in the pharmaceutical industry, some of these aspects may not be obvious, so I thought I would touch upon them. And of course, we will talk about some case studies. So let's move to the next slide and look at the agenda. In the last day and a half of this workshop, a few things really caught my attention as it relates to what matters to Indian pharma. Number one, serviceability. So we've heard a lot about how to address shortages, including in the previous session. Number two, quality and compliance. We heard quite a bit about data integrity and approvals and communications with the agency yesterday. Number three, I think there was a little bit of dabbling here and there about the trends that impact pharma, especially with the evolution of technology. So in today's session, as we address the problem statements we heard thus far, I want to leave you with three things. Number one, what are the terms and jargons in technology? Let's not get confused, but at the same time, let's also not get overwhelmed. Second thing is how to build a sound technology or a data strategy to support business objectives. And number three, which is probably the most important of all, how to establish governance, especially when global regulatory agencies are still developing such guidance as it pertains to the usage of technology around AI, ML, generative AI, etc. So that's what I want to leave you with. Now, as a member of the pharma ecosystem in India, we are here to help the industry progress. So I will conclude today with an ask from the Indian pharma, and what better forum than an IPA event to put forward that ask. Just to know what that ask is, you will have to bear with me and wait for about 30 to 35 minutes, as that will be the last slide in my presentation today. So without further ado, let's get started and move to the next slide. The industry in India is still an export-oriented one, especially to regulated markets. So in the next slide, let's move to the next slide. Let us quickly recap the state of the industry globally. Some of this has already been discussed, especially around drug shortages. So I won't go over the details of those. But what I will touch upon is around 2019-2020 timeframe, we saw the report come out of the Drug Shortages Task Force. And they spoke a lot about the need to incentivize good quality, not just punish bad quality. That's something that I'm still really looking forward to. But I think one thing that can be done is if we show more and more good quality, that becomes guidance, and that is the way we can possibly get the rewards. But in order to do so, the industry is also faced with other challenges. And as you can see, what's happening from the report in 2022, managing costs is becoming a huge ask in the industry. So really, that is a double whammy here. On the one hand, you have a restricted budget, and on the other hand, you have to enhance quality. And in such times, what other than technology can be your best friend? So in the next slide, we share our process on how we build technology strategy at Amazon, and more specifically in Amazon Web Services Life Sciences. So the process here is very, very simple. We start with understanding the customer's business problems. That is the starting point. And I will share some examples of that as we discuss some customer stories going forward. We then build fit-for-purpose solutions, and that requires us to sharpen our capabilities and teams to sustain our leadership position as a preferred partner to the industry. And once we have this leadership position, and as we get to that point, we see more and more partners who want to be part of this ecosystem. And suddenly, what do we have? We are able to get more fit-for-purpose solutions and bring them faster to the industry. So that is our USP. In doing so, we are actually concentrating on 5 aspects around technology. Number one, it's around data sharing models. Why this is important? Because we have to address the issue of interoperability and security, and this is one of the fundamental foundations on which technology can survive and can thrive. Second thing is, we briefly spoke about it, fit for purpose solutions, which is industry cloud solutions. I think the industry part is fairly obvious. Going to cloud has its own advantages. I don't have the time to discuss that in detail, but if there are questions on that, I'm happy to take that. I think in the ERP session earlier today, there was a question about blockchain. What is the status? What is the state of blockchain? It is actually getting adopted, believe it or not. And it has really helped us secure communication, collaboration, protect contracts, etc. So that's an area which is of very high focus to us. We call disruptive IT as a catch-all bucket because we see new challenges and it is really imperative for us to address these with new solutions, cannot rest on status quo. And finally, I'll spend some time on this, on artificial intelligence and large learning models. So it's not just about the potential use cases that these models or this technology can address, but it is also about the governance and usage, and we will talk about this briefly. We will talk about why governance is important and what is really governance entail. And that's a good segue into the next slide. So how to introduce technology and make it integral to product development? Technology cannot be an afterthought. So the same process that we follow at AWS, which we just spoke about, which we just saw, for building products, solutions, and services for the industry, we recommend the same for the pharma industry as well. It starts with a firm understanding of the vision and strategy, which translates to two things. One is specific priorities, which each business function will pursue, and in parallel, how to align these priorities to company strategy. We have to ensure that there is a data strategy and governance mechanism which is in place. And then, of course, come the enablers, of which technology is one. And finally, there is this organization DNA. We heard about this quality culture yesterday and also in the previous session. So for my next 30 to 40 minutes of discussion today, I will restrict it to 2, 3, and 4. So if we move to the next slide, we will see business priorities and data governance here. So if you concentrate on the top half of the slide, the use cases called out against business functions are just examples here. I'm sure there are many more, but I just wanted to illustrate the point. And what you see on the right, I have taken examples from quality, procurement, and I heard somebody mention in the previous session why procurement is very important, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And some advancements in manufacturing. So the customer success stories, which I will show in subsequent slides, will touch upon these topics. Now, these are point use cases which can definitely contribute towards addressing drug shortages. By no means am I saying that this is a unified strategy to address shortages. We will talk about addressing shortages subsequently. But I'm just saying that it has been demonstrated, it has been proved that shortages can in fact be addressed and technology exists today to address. So that is the limited point that I want to make on the top half of the slide. Coming to the bottom half of the slide, you can see a very, very simple framework for data strategy and governance. You should be able to do these 5 things. Okay, so that's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, if you take an example of findability, for example, and how it is relevant in our situation when it pertains to GMP, when it pertains to addressing drug shortages, etc. It's nothing but the ability to search, which is critical, say, when responding to queries. If I take the example of reusability, it can enable higher productivity and it can also minimize transcription errors. Think data integrity, on which we spent a lot of time yesterday. So numbers 2, 3, and 4 that we talked about in the last slide, I have touched upon 2 and 3, which is business priorities and data strategy governance. The next few slides, I will talk about number 4, which is technology. So as we move to the next slide, This is something which was shown to you, I think, by the McKinsey speaker Joe yesterday. He spoke about terminologies and jargon. So I don't want to repeat that, but I just want to leave you with one message. Typically, most of the use cases can be handled through AI and ML in pharma. Of course, there are evolving needs, and there is evolving technology through generative AI. So, as part of the art of possible, I will delve into that as well. So, if you move to the next slide, this is a very simple but very poignant explanation of what a foundation model is. In the previous slide, we saw how foundation models really power generative AI. So how does this happen? How are models built? First of all, we have to train the model with unbiased data. Of course, if there are some questions around bias and what it can do to a model and how it can basically derail the whole exercise, we can talk about that. But just understand we need unbiased data to train the model, which is where a significant time is spent. And eventually it is evaluated and then the model is ready for use. However, we can also see in some examples, these models are not something which will readily give you the kind of output that you seek. Based on your particular need, you may have to fine tune it further. So if you go to the next slide, you see the different types of outputs or the different types of tasks for which you can have a model train and it can respond. So it can give you a text output. It can give you a brief summary of maybe text running into multiple pages. It can answer questions. It can do quite a few things. So if you move to the next slide, you will see how generative AI really works. You have an input, which is typically given through text. It can be given through other means as well. The foundation model absorbs the question, understands the question, processes the response, and provides you with an output. The output could be a text, it could be an image, it could be video, it could be audio, it can even be code. So for those who are writing codes, it can be even that. And if you move to the next slide, what you can really see here is the different types of foundation model. There are some which are restricted for text to text. There are some which do text to embeddings. But actually the most advanced ones are the multimodal ones. Here you can give a plethora of input. It can be images, it can be text, it can be multiple different things. And finally, you can get an output of the kind that you desire. And these are the kind of things that you really need, especially when you are trying to process data from multiple batches. You have images of maybe some of your equipment or some of the chromatographs. You can put all of it, and finally you can get some kind of a response as to what the quality issue was probably due to, just as an example, right? So if you move to the next one, this is just a brief to get everyone on the same page. What is the difference between how you train a machine learning model versus how you train a foundation model? Basically, as we saw in the previous slides, a foundation model is something which can provide you with multiple kinds of output, whereas a machine learning model is trained only to give one particular kind of output. And if you progress further on the slides, we will take some examples of how we have really solved customer problems using AI ML. So this was for a customer in Europe. I think this was for Novo Nordisk, if I remember correctly. Yes, it was for Novo Nordisk. The ask was very simple. Here is a pallet, and the pallet has multiple vials. We just want to make sure that the count of the number of vials is perfect each time. When it is getting auto-filled, there are times when some slots are not filled. So how do you make sure that all slots are filled and there is no deficiency in the quantity? This whole project end to end, right from stating the problem statement to actually delivering a working model, it took us just about 6 weeks. So what I'm trying to say through this is there are ways by which we can dedicate ourselves to the problem at hand and we can develop quick solutions. Uh, Not everything, of course, can happen in 6 weeks, but the whole process of how we went about it is called out in the chart. And I've also provided you with a link for the YouTube video, which talks about the entire case study, but the relevant aspect of how this engagement was run. I've also shared the time coordinates. Now, if you move to the next slide, here is a very interesting example. Novartis was really trying to drive down on procurement costs. They also wanted to drive up the consolidation of suppliers because there were way too many suppliers, and they wanted to make sure that each supplier is held to the kind of quality with which they are supposed to supply. And on the other hand, to their own staff, they wanted to make sure that the self-ordering, especially for lab supplies, was just like how you would see in Amazon.com or Amazon.in, wherein you put in what you want, and based on a few queries or your past buying patterns, you will be given some suggestions or recommendations. So specifically for the kind of work that you do, what is the most optimal buy, ensuring that it satisfies the regulatory and compliance or quality requirements of what you want to do, but also you are getting a good price. So overall, they were able to reduce procurement costs by 5% across the world. And the users were also pretty happy because they got the right recommendations for when they wanted to make purchases. So if you go to the next slide, here is an example of where we solved a problem for Merck. This was for the global labeling group. As you know, when a global label is generated, it is passed on to the regions and then to the local countries, and each of them have to generate their own labels for their products. Let's say something happened in a particular market, and that is causing you to change the label in that market. Now, does it mean that you have to change the labels everywhere, or the whole exercise of even trying to find out which are the geographies that get impacted, why they are getting impacted, what kind of changes, and to initiate this whole change control process, that in itself takes a significant amount of time, and that is also not error-proof, because after all, humans are going through tons of data and trying to come to some conclusions. This whole aspect has been automated through knowledge graphs. And if you are just able to provide the input, what kind of changes and why the change was made in a particular label for the same product globally, what is the impact? It'll give you a recommendation in a matter of just a couple of minutes. And then you can go back to the source and check against which those recommendations were provided. And then the regulatory specialist can go ahead and initiate a change request workflow from there on. If you go to the next slide, the last example that I have of a success story is that of continuous manufacturing. This is a pretty interesting one. Here, the situation is such that, especially when you think about geriatrics, their compliance to adherence of sticking to their medication schedule can be iffy. So the whole idea is if they're taking maybe 2 or 3 different products, if all of that can be put into the same capsule, so that they just have to consume one unit at a given time during the day. But in order to do so, I don't need to preach to the choir here. All of you in the industry, you know how difficult it is to manufacture to the size of one. But we have been able to achieve that. It has been possible by automating the robots in the manufacturing robots in parallel. And these robots decide which medicines to pick, the dosage, and how to fill the capsules. And this has definitely not just increased the productivity, but the compliance has also significantly gone up. So all this is what has been done. So any of this or something related to this, we can do it. It's been proven. If we go to the next slide, this is where we talk about, I have picked out some of the conversations that I'm having with various people in the industry. What kind of problems you are actually trying to solve based on your current situations. I have the first two in bold because I have some suggestions for that. The first cycle approval delays. We heard a lot about drug shortages, right? Is there a way by which we can predict shortages, and can we arrange for alternative supplies? So these are two things which can be done today, but it is not being done. So I want to implore to the industry to see if we can work with you together to address some of these. A couple of others that we are also talking about, the whole aspect of how you bring a product into your pipeline, the various functions which contribute to that. There are ways to automate the whole thing. Your whole aspect of how do you do product development in the generics industry. There are many ways by which we can help. And then there was a lot of discussion about what do we do as far as procurement is concerned, how do we do better contracts with them. But the whole idea is certain processes can be put in place, but the most important thing is across the end-to-end value chain, you need visibility. It can be external partners, it can be internal partners. How do you provide role-based visibilities, and how do you provide the necessary triggers for the partners in the ecosystem to act when you expect something to go down, or when you see a shortage forthcoming? How do you do that? So that kind of visibility. So these are very things we're talking about. So if you go to the next slide, let me expand a little bit on this whole aspect around first cycle approvals. I don't need to go into the problem statement into how abysmal that is. But my speaking to quite a few in the industry, basically I'm being told that, see, it is not that we don't know what needs to be done, but these idiosyncrasies of some of these reviewers, they come up with these questions. Did you try this? What happens if this weren't done, or if that would? So the whole idea is how we can go back to the past learnings from any such queries. I've heard the same submission. If it were to go to a different reviewer, maybe that question would not be asked. But if the question is asked to generate the data, to come up with conclusions with those data, it may take from 3 to 6 months, and suddenly you have got a delay, right? So we can go back and pour through all that experience from the past, and we can build models which can prompt you even prior to submission if the document is complete or not. It is your choice then to take those suggestions and address them a priori before submission, or you may choose to believe that, well, that won't be applicable here, we can go forward. Ultimately, the aim should be auto-authoring. You don't need people authoring. And when it is auto-authoring, it is capturing all the data that is available in the organization from everywhere. And wherever there is missing data, all those have been called out. So you readily have a document which says that it is 75% ready. These are the 10 items which are missing, and these are missing because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Somebody can attend to it, and suddenly you have the whole preparation has really gone into an automated mode. Now, what this will also do is eventually it will put some pressure on the regulators. You have the backing on which you have submitted an ANDA, and you can challenge the regulators at any point, not just for their queries, but also for the amount of time that, not just for their queries, but also for the amount of time that it really takes for them to get back to you. So there are so many things that can be done, but we need to get started. So if you go to the next slide, the problem on shortages, right? I have provided some statistics on this, and I think this has been beaten to death in the last day and a half. So I won't go to the left side of this slide. I'll just address the right one. No. Please stay in that slide. Don't advance it. Yes, stay here. The whole idea is for compliance requirements, we have multiple mechanisms to track the passage of products in the supply chain. I will not go into the specific details, some of which I have called out here, but just understand the fact that we are able to track the products in the supply chain for various regulatory requirements, the same data can actually be used for predicting shortages. And this has been done and proven. And I have shared some link over here. You can go and read a bit more about it. And I'm happy to have further conversations with those who are interested. This is a partner who has provided that solution, and it's a fantastic solution. So there are things we can do that we don't do today. Technology will enable you to do that. If you go to the next slide, this is a very critical aspect that I wanted to speak about. It is because today we don't have established rules on how one could use artificial intelligence. The most important thing is when you are trying to imbibe artificial intelligence as part of your overall product development process, there should be a process by which you adopt AI. Now, I don't want to go through each of these levels, but I will just try to get your attention to levels 3 and 4, because ideally, the industry should be at least at level 3, and it should aspire to be at level 4. So what is level 3? You have contribution coming from multiple stakeholders within and outside the organization to ensure that when you're using artificial intelligence, you have adhered to the requirements and the needs of each of these functions. And you need somebody to be a coordinator across these functions, and you can call that person an internal overseer, or you can give whatever title, doesn't matter. But that role needs to be there, and that function needs to do its job. So it's not just about, oh, we see something interesting, we can just go ahead, try and use it. There are a lot of complications. Time doesn't permit me to going into these, but I'll just leave you with one example. A lot of times you don't have data to train the model. So you need to find ways to create synthetic data. If you're creating synthetic data, there is a lot of legality and there is a lot of issues that you have to ensure you're not crossing the limits, and it is an ethical way of development. Maybe more so in the medical field than the pharma field, but nevertheless, some of those are applicable to the pharma field as well. So it is a very, very important function. Let's not underestimate that. Level 4 is, it is not just that you have taken a particular problem and you have made sure that to address that problem, however you are going to use AI, it has addressed the needs of all the internal and external stakeholders. Level 4 puts you at a position wherein you feel comfortable that when you are taking any new problem, your process and systems are in place so that you will not fail. That is your level 4. So level 3 is absolute minimum. Level 4 is where you can aspire to be. We can have more. I'm going to leave you my contact details. We can have more conversations around this if all of this cannot be covered in Q&A. But I cannot stress enough the importance of governance, and I just wanted to put this one slide around that. So if I have to recap the 3 things I said, I will share with you. Number 1 was all these jargons on technology and whatnot. Number 2, I said what are customer stories, how technology can really help, which is actually the title given to me, transformation case study through AI. We saw some examples. And number 3, I said the most important thing, which is governance. So I go to the next slide. This is the last slide where I really have come back to you with an ask. Business strategy and priorities should dictate technology strategy. I think we saw that. Governance should not be an afterthought. So that is just summarizing whatever I said. The second and third points are part of the ask. What I see of late in the industry is that everyone wants technology to help them advance. They also say that their processes are very, very unique. They do things differently from any of the other peer companies within the same industry. So I lead you back to one of the slides where I mentioned foundation models are there. But if I have to help you address those uniqueness in your situation, it requires fine tuning. So if I'm going to do fine tuning, you need to help me. You need to provide me with the data. I will help you to ensure that that is secure. Not only is your data secure, whatever learnings I have imparted to the model, those learnings will not be taken away from your environment and shared with others. It will remain for you. We can make it happen that way. And there are ways to demonstrate and prove that that is how it is done. So you can rest assured that you're not losing any competitive advantage to the rest of your peers. On the other hand, if you really want to make progress and make progress faster, as an industry body, we can come together and decide these are 5 things that we will do as an industry together. We don't have to put effort at every company level. Everything else, it's okay. Let people decide how they maintain their competitive advantage and how they want to do. In such cases, data will be shared. We will develop or we will refine models with experience and data coming from everywhere. But in doing so, we can make progress faster. And even if 4 to 5 companies were to come together, and let's say a couple of them want to join later, as an association or as a consortium, you can decide how do you admit, because they are coming in late, they are bringing in their data late, but then they are going to be able to enjoy the advantage of the advancements of the models that you have developed. So you impose a fee on them for them to come in. My urging to the industry is have clarity on thought. What is something that you believe is competitive advantage, where you want to rise together as an industry. Help us help you, and we are more than happy to do that. With that, if you can go to the last slide, that is my contact. You can drop me a note anytime. I'm more than happy to engage. And thank you for the time, and thank you, IPA, for getting me in front of this audience and also giving me the opportunity to hear speakers prior to me and after me. Great learning for me as well. Thank you.
Question which is raised by Mr. Manoj Kumar Gira. He's asking what approach should be taken for validation, CSV, while adding AI insights in GXP application, especially when dealing with unsupervised models. How we can address AI cancers within a GXP environment? I don't know about second question, but first question, let us answer if it is possible. Rajesh?
Yeah, give me a moment. I'm reading the question myself. What approach should be taken? See, to begin with, adding AI insights into GXP applications, I think just like you do in any situation, you first train. You then, after you train, you validate, and then you validate, and then you test. And only when you feel that it is ready to be put in production and it can be left unsupervised, you can get to that point. There are ways by which you can generate test data, which can test for different scenarios, and that'll help you fine tune the model better. I definitely feel that, I mean, this, first of all, it's a great question because this goes to the heart of the problem that I was saying. You should have governance in place. And it is through such governance mechanisms that you address problems of this kind. So first of all, thanks for this question. It goes to the heart of what I really wanted to communicate, that AI is not something that you just have and you can use it tomorrow. It's all about how you imbibe this and make it as part of your development process. Just like you develop a product. When you develop a product, you test, you develop, you do, you transfer it, then you validate it, and then you also monitor for real world evidence, and then you make the necessary changes. The same thing applies here also. I don't think I can answer that in any better way. Now, how can we address AI cancers within a GXP environment? I think that also, the way I understood this questions, how can a rogue AI be detected, which can basically throw the whole thing into a haywire. That is where your mechanisms of how you test, how you validate, what kind of synthetic data you accept, all of those come in place. And there is an extent to which, even if I had the time, I can talk about it, beyond which I will have to bring in my colleagues who are technical experts in this area. But as I said, I have left my contact. Please reach out and we can go to any breadth and depth of discussion on this topic.
Thank you very much.